At Objectif Lune, we create, automate and distribute your most important documents. And traditionally, we've always been about the outbound documents, maybe a part of the accounts receivable process, the invoices and the mail optimization. But with our new OL Connect technology, we can talk about many other documents in the same process. Maybe the accounts payable stuff of documents coming in. But the one I'm going to concentrate on today is proof of delivery. So what is your existing situation with your delivery documents? Are they manual? Are they paper-based? Does it take an awful lot of time for the driver to bring those deliveries back into the business? Does that stop you getting cash back in? Let's talk about those things in a little bit more detail. So according to the mobility report done by Field Technology, 60% of field service companies are not using automation software in any way, shape or form. And 82% of companies identified as optimizing their mobility as a key part of their strategy moving forward. So what are the requirements you have today? Well, they are to accelerate the process you have for managing your proof of delivery. We can do that by reducing the paper process. So let's go through the options and work out how we can help you. So the first option is paper-based process. And the paper-based process is all about getting a customer signature onto your proof of delivery. If you do that, that drives the revenue. 5% of all delivery notes have to be redone, have to get re-signed. When they do, it means you lose your revenue. So you have a paper-based process. And now you've upgraded yourself to scanning. But now that you're scanning those proof of deliveries, you've still created more issue because the issues are based around manual process. You're now manually scanning in those proof of deliveries. You're manually indexing those documents into the ECM system. You're still manually matching the invoice and the proof of delivery. It's still a manual paper-based process, even though you're scanning. So now your final option may be to move to a mobile computer, a PDA. Like you see on the screen here. The problem here is that these computers are very expensive, but more important than that, they're actually very, very difficult to integrate into your existing back-end infrastructure. So there's a hell of a lot of cost in going to this solution, but also it still doesn't really give you what you need. Introducing the Objectif Lune approach to smarter proof of deliveries. Let's look at your current processes that you may currently have. The order is picked, delivery note is printed. We may be using line printers and two-part stationery so we can carbonate the signature. The truck is loaded with the goods and the driver leaves off to deliver those goods to the customer. When he arrives at the customer, some of those deliveries are great, customer signs, no problem. Some of those deliveries though, there may be some notes, there may be some changes that the customer wants to talk to the driver about. Sometimes those notes and changes are placed onto the proof of delivery that the driver brings back. The customer here thinks he's made an important decision. He thinks he's made an important statement. The driver comes back with those notes and he delivers them to somebody who's now got to translate those delivery notes back into the process. Now, by the time those notes come back, some may have been lost, but some may have been ruined. They may not be able to scan. And that important note that the customer gave him here has been lost by the time it gets into the process. So now let's look at what a proof of delivery solution would look like using OL Connect. The first thing we've done is we've solved the integration problem. The ERP system still prints as it always did, but now we capture it using OL Connect. We now put that dispatch note directly onto a tablet. So the driver is taking a tablet away with him. So when the driver arrives at his customer, the driver can now enhance the customer experience. He can change the quantity. He can maybe take a picture of the damaged goods. He can take some notes. But more importantly, he can take the signature of the customer accepting the delivery. Now with OL Connect, we have a different proposition. As soon as the customer signs and the driver hits submit, that electronic dispatch note immediately arrives back at OL Connect. And as soon as we have it in OL Connect, we can start to do some really clever things with it. First, we can strip the data through an EDI portal, talk to the ERP system. At the same time, we're putting a copy of that dispatch note into an EDM system where we can index it straight away. Now think about that. What that means is when we do the invoice run later, we can go and look at the EDM system and match the invoice to the signed dispatch note. That means the customer's got to pay. That means your debtor days are reduced. The amount of cash days are certainly reduced. But more importantly than any of that, your customer is being communicated with. On the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see the dispatch note that you're probably already printing onto two-part stationery to get your signature. And if you look on the right-hand side of the screen, it's what we've done with that same print job and putting it into OL Connect. We've made it interactive, we've made it adaptive, And we've made it easier for the dispatch drivers to use. They can change the quantities. They can get the signature. They can put notes. They can show maps of where they are. All driven by the web technology that's built inside OL Connect. And finally, let's talk about that all-important customer journey. Previously, how were you telling the customers where his ordered goods were in the cycle? You were struggling, right? So now what we're doing with OL Connect is we're telling him every step of the way what's happening. And we can tell him by different communication means. We can drop him an email. We can drop him an SMS. We can tell him where his goods are for every stage of the process before they arrive to him. And when he's received his goods, he'll get an email straight away, not only confirming that he's had that delivery, but also a full copy of that signed dispatch note that's all important for you to go and get the cash later on. So in summary, let's talk about some key capabilities. We've solved the integration problem. Your ERP system prints, as it always did, straight into OL Connect. Once we have it in OL Connect, we can create dispatch notes to match your process. And when that dispatch note comes back in, we create as many workflows as you like to improve your cash to order cycle. So what's in it for you? Well, very simply, you improve your cash flow. And the reason you improve your cash flow is because every invoice gets paid. Why does every invoice get paid? Because you can now prove that every delivery that you did was signed for. Let's talk about Objectif Lune and our key differentiators. We're the largest installed base within our industry. We're enterprise technology for mid-sized companies. We're a global company with local offices delivering global support. We implement fast. We integrate fast. We respect your timescales and your budgets. We put you in control of your processes.